Welcome to Checks and Balances. I'm Michael Vincent. This is James Blair. And this week, for part 2 of the property development journey, we've got Matthew Harris.
So, Matthew Harris, tax man, managing director at Lighthouse, and also property investor to the stars. Welcome back.
Good to be back. Property investor and property developer.
So, if you have not seen the previous episode, stop right now and go back and listen to part 1 where Matt talks about his property journey and how as he started as a simple boy from the Hawke's Bay earning $34,000 a year. You've got to go and listen to that before you listen to this one. Today, we're talking all about you jumped up with the big boys.
Yeah, I did. And you have to go back and watch the journey, part 1. One, because I think it's interesting, and 2, you need context if we're going to go on my property journey and get to property development, because it didn't just happen.
Yeah, so I want to do a quick kind of side story beforehand. Mike, we talk to people all the time and they go, hey, I'm thinking about building my first home, or I'm a dentist and I'm going to buy all this land and build all of these townhouses on it. What's your usual response?
I got 2 different responses. For the first one, which is first home buyers who say, I'm going to build my first house, because I'll make some instant gains out of it. I'm like, I have never met someone in my life who's turned around to me after they built a house and gone, geez, that was fun. God, I enjoyed doing that. Wasn't that stress-free?
Yeah.
It just
didn't that stay on schedule?
Yeah. And then the second one is no shade, but it's always doctors, surgeons, anaesthetists who go, no, I'm going to put 10 townhouses on this block of land. And I go, you work, 10 hours a day, 6 days a week. When are you going to do that? And they go, I'll get a project manager. And I go, you've never built a house, have you?
Yeah. And it's not a game for anybody. It's, higher risk, right, Matt?
Huge amount more risk.
Failure is kind of much more likely than just a more passive buying new build strategy.
Yeah, correct. With a buy and hold strategy, it's wealth creation over time. So it's buy well, add value, wait for capital appreciation to occur, mortgages to reduce, rents to increase. The market can go like this during that period and it pretty much doesn't affect you. Interest rates obviously affect you, but other than that, it's pretty safe because you hold for a long term. When you develop property to sell, especially, because you can develop to hold, when you develop to sell, you are at the whim of the market. Which moves quickly, as we've seen.
And I just want you to delve into that a little bit more, because property development isn't, I plan to do this, I get permission and it's done in a month. It's over a 12, 16-month period. So you are locking in your costs and then the market will move.
Yeah, exactly. So when back to buy and hold, when you buy and hold property, you don't have to inflation adjust it. When you lock in that loan, you effectively pause inflation on the loan. When you're a property developer, when you lock in your project, you have quotes and you have a sale price generally, because you have to pre-sell in most cases. If you do not deliver in time, inflation will effectively erode your return. And the other interesting thing about being a property developer, it's a bit like owning a casino. When you own a casino, you can't just expand mercilessly because regulation stops you. The environment stops you. Property developers are very much the same. In a high market, they can't just expand because it's hard to get land, hard to get materials. In a low market, they can't just expand their business because they can't get any sales, they can't get any credit. It's one of the very few businesses that's actually constrained by the economy in totality.
So if we link it back to the previous episode, at what point in your property journey did you go, and what year roughly, did you go, I think this is the right transition for us into development?
So it was roughly about years 7 to 8. And it was like my journey in general. It wasn't something that I just went, it's time. It was something that I percolated for some time. I'd seen clients do it. And it was actually one of my clients who got me into the area that I did the very first development. That was South Auckland, place called Papatoetoe. And he'd been doing developments out there for 3 or 4 years, 4 to 5 townhouses. And to give people some background on development in New Zealand has very much moved from large format development, which is places like Millwater, and
Hobsonville Point.
Hobsonville Point. Where's the one out south?
There's a ton of them.
Where the temple is. I can't quite, the name's lost in me. Flatbush.
Yeah.
We've gone from large format developments where developers do 50, 100 houses to terraced housing.
Yeah.
And terraced housing, probably the greatest thing that's happened for property developers in New Zealand for a couple of reasons. First of all, that higher density allows central city sites to be done. And we went from doing large format 50 houses to 5 to 10. But also it allowed the ordinary person, me, to become a property developer.
Yeah.
I probably would have to wait quite a bit longer to do a 50 townhouse development.
It's also what the city needed, right?
Oh, 100%.
You can only build out for so long.
Out in the edges, yeah.
Yep.
So that happened bit by council design, a little bit by environment and funding. So I decided to do South Auckland because my client was out there. And I remember going out with AJ, who I mentioned in the previous episode, who is my cousin, mortgage director, part of my family investment group. And we went out looking in South Auckland on the weekends. So we were looking for 800 to 1,000 metre square sites.
Yeah.
And a couple of things I noticed. I'm not from Auckland. South Auckland very much has a stigma attached to it. It's not necessarily true. It's very tidy. In a lot of places, it's quite beautiful.
Yeah.
Lots of the streets are named after war heroes. There's a lot of little Anzac symbols. There's lots of parks. And a lot of these sites were owned by people who had owned them for 20, 30 years. And those people had gone through that wealth creation journey by default. They were owner-occupied houses, and these houses were now worth $1 million. Yeah. We paid $1,050,000 for that site, and they paid like $200,000 for it.
Yeah. They're selling up to move to the retirement home.
Correct.
Yeah.
So they're getting out of Auckland. They're doing well.
They go $1,050,000. Beautiful.
It was beautiful. So we decided out South Auckland for a couple of reasons. So I think in Auckland, if you're going to develop property, you pretty much go three ways. You go out west.
Yeah.
You go out south. Or you go kind of out over the North Shore towards like Millwater, where there's land available.
Yeah.
But I think west and south are the more obvious for terraced housing because the affordability of that versus a terraced housing in Mount Albert, for example.
Yeah.
Can I stop you and just take one step back, Matt?
Yep.
So 2018, 2019, you had a really successful property portfolio already.
Oh, yes. Very important
you,
question.
Are thinking, I'm going to add quite a lot more risk. You've got a successful business here. There's a lot of things to life.
Yes.
Why did you decide to add the additional complexity to your life? Are you just like a man who wants more stress, more weight on the shoulders?
Sleep.
Yeah, I know. And I must admit, there's been plenty of sleepless nights during this journey. Yeah. No, I think
we should get some tissues, Rob.
Yeah. I think that for me, it was the natural progression as a property investor is to rise up, like in business, is to rise up the levels of complexity.
Yeah.
Pretty much I clocked being a buy and hold investor. I'd figured out how to do the debt arbitrage. I'd figured out to grow a big portfolio and how to hold it. We didn't discuss it in the previous episode, but it's a thing called a wealth wheel where you mix of properties and yields together. So I figured all that out more or less, and it's been painful at times. Rising up the levels of complexity was just the next step, and a lot of property investors go through this journey, and that's really important what you said at the beginning about with the first timers who come in and say, I want to do this.
Yeah.
Honestly, don't. I, like Mike, have never heard someone go, that was a great experience. It came out on time and on cost.
Yeah.
And including me, I've silly decided to build my own house 2 years ago, and 2 years later it's still not done.
Isn't it interesting as well that with all the experience and skills you've developed, you've still had that horrible experience?
Yeah, exactly. And it was easy when I'm a property investor because I'm detached from it.
Yeah.
I'm way to invest in this bloody house.
Yeah.
And it's chewed bandwidth from me, and I would never do it again.
Yeah. So you've got that. Just a reminder, leave that cup alone with the microphone.
Noise. Yeah, I'm going to put it over
Ravi's
there.
triggered in the background.
Sorry, Ravi.
So you've gone up the levels of complexity.
Yep.
It must be because you can get a better return on investment.
Correct.
So,
and it's two things. So I've always invested, not always, but probably about midway through my property journey, I started investing as part of a property family group. With my twin brother and my cousin. And that's helped us go forward quicker. My brother is a graphic designer by trade. He owns a digital agency, but he's very good with aesthetics of properties. AJ is a mortgage broker, very good with debt, and I am very good at getting things done.
Yeah.
So I used to just go get contracts, make them all figure it out.
Yeah.
My younger brother moved back from the States. We had this massive portfolio. Someone needed to run it. he was the obvious choice. So we have him already. He's an engineer by trade, very, very practical.
Yeah.
Lots of people in office have used him for all sorts of things. He gets stuff done. He's
He's
very good. Yeah. And poor guy's always getting stuff done for me yesterday. I mean, yesterday we showed up to that damn house that shan't be named to tidy up the site before the garage goes in next week. Yeah. So I had him as well. So there's two reasons. Go up the levels of complexity. I've got my brother here who wants opportunities, a bit younger. He's come back to do this. We're like, well, let's start a property development business.
So it wasn't just about you, it was about the family.
It was about the family. Yep. So, I didn't need any more to do.
Yep.
But there's a long-term goal, which is to have a property investment business, which helps us all in our wealth creation goals.
Yeah. And a lot of people think, maybe I just want to keep this to myself. I don't want to share my wealth. Yes. It was quite an easy decision for you, was it?
One of the things I learned at Inland Revenue, if you go back to the part one, you'll see that I worked there, was that New Zealanders are not very good at intergenerational wealth creation. We're very much me. Whereas I saw lots of other cultures who invested together, who had a longer term view, and they did a lot better than us. And it really changed my thinking about wealth creation as an individual versus a group. And it's fine if you obviously are really, really, really successful and you have plenty of money to burn, but you still have to have the burden of all the risk.
Yeah.
I sleep a little bit better at night in the tough times, knowing that if it went down, I wouldn't be the only one on the ship.
You have some company.
I got some company.
In the cold waters.
But I think it's a really important note as we go into this like really complex environment where property has changed a lot, and it's a lot harder to just invest as an individual, just build a big portfolio as an individual. You will get further with a cousin, a brother, a father or mother involved. Or a friend.
But at the same time, you've got to be also very careful of those relationships as well.
Definitely. And I wouldn't be human if I didn't say that there's times when I could have just had all that for myself. But importantly, my brother, my cousin, we all also invest on our own accounts. We run businesses. We're growing our own wealth independently. I think that's an important part of it. If it was all just tied to this one vehicle, it probably would be more niggly. So I don't think it's for everyone.
So you found that, jumping back, you found that site down south.
Yes.
What happens next?
Landscape road. So it was a great road. The mayor of Papatoa used to live on this road apparently, and it's got a nice poplars and it had no power lines, one of the very few in Auckland. So planning begins to build a 5 townhouse development. Here's where it gets interesting. At this point, we're not technically property developers because that property was funded and designed to keep. All 5 properties. So we start. It's delayed twice by COVID. By the lockdowns, it stops, and instead of ending at the beginning of 2021, it ends at the end of 2021. And so the environment has changed immeasurably. Probably between June and November, it went from a really buoyant, easy credit market to a market where credit had become incredibly hard to get. And so this presented a practical problem because we had a construction loan, and what happens if you build properties is you get a construction loan, and if you're going to keep them, you roll on to a residential loan. If you're going to sell them, no problem. You sell them and you pay down the loan. So we had to do some shuffling, and what happened is the bank said you can't keep them. And we tried very, very hard to keep them. We went and got valuations, put a whole lot of extra collateral up, did heaps of stuff, and they were like, no, there's just no way. So we ended up selling 4 of the 5 and keeping 1. And in the end, it was actually a really great outcome. They sold really, really well. We put them through OPS partners, and they all sold within a few weeks. And they had a really great profit margin in them. And so by then, we'd already bought other development sites and had started that process, but they were still bought on a buy and hold basis because we're still making the transition from buy and hold investor to full developer. And we still think that we're in this environment where we can keep properties forever and we can fund them. And the environment's changed. And we've had a bit of a coming to God, and it's got quite difficult. And we've made that clear choice now as we roll through, and we've sold these properties that we didn't want to sell and that we weren't geared up to sell. And we've gone, okay, actually, we've got quite a bit of capital now. What are we going to do? another development site, another development, except this time we're slowly changing to a point where we're going to develop full-time.
Yeah.
Was it hard to go from the thinking of we're building 5 properties to keep 5 properties to we're going to have to let 4 of the 5 go, or was it quite?
No, it was. And I remember the initial panic of it all, thinking, shit, all this wealth creation. Because we created quite a bit of wealth out of the site was bought for $1 million. It was 1.8 million build cost, and each of those properties was $1 million.
Yeah.
So you can see without the tax bill that comes from a Brightline sale.
Yeah.
And that was the other thing we told the bank. We're like, we can't do this. We're going to Brightline.
Yeah.
We're going to pay a shit ton of tax on this. And they said, don't care. So it was difficult, but I think all things happen for a reason. And once the process was done and they were sold, and we're sitting with this cash and this opportunity to do other sites, I think it was for the best, because now we've transitioned fully to develop to sell. And I think that is important, because we're now in an environment where actually buying and holding is difficult, if not impossible, on a large scale.
Yeah. And when you're transitioning from that buy and hold strategy to or plan to buy to sell, does that alter the design or the quality of the product you're building at all, or the layout and that sort of thing?
Only a little bit.
Yeah.
If you look at any of our properties in our portfolio, and our houses, our office, everything's tidy. My brother and I especially, really tidy, ordered humans. And so those landscape houses were really beautiful. And that's why they sold really well. Yeah. They weren't necessarily higher spec, but they were a little bit higher spec than normal. Yeah. And we've carried that through, but it definitely alters the design. When you look at a site and I think the sweet spot for terraced housing is 3 bedrooms, 1 garage. Yeah. Anything else gets a bit weird. The economics of it don't work, and you really try really hard to design that on a site. And what the council will allow in terms of density and garages and sites differ. So I think yes is the answer. It does change it. So I think where we've ended up with is, out of necessity, we've come as large investors to the point where we have to develop property, because the opportunity to be a buy and hold investor is just not there at the moment. So that's probably the third reason. Scales of complexity, so natural inclination to get better at business. Second thing is family dynamics. Alex, our brother's back, needs to do something. And third thing is we probably have no choice. If we want to continue that journey.
Yeah, the market dictates and you adjust.
Yeah, exactly.
Mike, I'm going to break the fourth wall. I'm having laptop issues, so I'll let you do the driving going forward.
Okay, no worries. So I guess in terms of you've been through this journey of buy and hold, planning to do developments to buy and hold, to now being a property developer where you're going to sell, what would some of your biggest lessons be along that journey?
Yeah, I think our planning. When you do a property development, the planning required is quite a lot more, and it takes quite a bit longer than doing a buy and hold reno. And we didn't understand this, and we probably still don't understand it properly. You have to, so for example, when you get bank funding, you have to use a QS, so a quantity surveyor. It's a huge amount of paperwork required. You have to line up your quotes, and then the type of contract that you get dictates how they'll pay you, and that was something.
Price, build only, all these different ones.
Because
they're different varying degrees of risks.
100%. And we didn't understand that properly either. And it's funny, I can work in property for literally 15 years. And even I miss some little nuances in the way contracts are put together. So with that landscape development payment, it was a progress payment. But we were running it like a builder developer. So quite often I'd go to do progress payments. One thing out of like the 10 things wasn't done. Couldn't get that progress claim. So that means I have to fund it for a lot further or a lot longer before I can get the money back. Whereas a change in contract would have allowed a cleaner payment stream. So that was some of the lessons. And then I think the other lessons is you can't control the environment. So the lockdowns. Couldn't control them, could do nothing. And the cost of materials changed constantly during that period. You can control a bit of that. Good planning controls that. But as I said, because we're new in this business. Of course, we're not as good as a long-term developer who plans the hell out of it.
Isaac locks in the material cost up front. Might have a storage yard where they can store it, so they can store it off-site, all of this sort of stuff. And
so the final lesson, which I think is really important, is that margin is everything in property. if you operate on a thin margin, you are far closer to the risk edge than people who have a robust margin. And for example, 15% is considered a thin margin in property. If you can start at 20%, that 5% can mean the absolute difference between success and failure.
No, okay. And then in terms of, I guess, when clients come to us and they say, this is what I want to do. I want to do the development thing. I've got my heart set on it. What do you say to them? Do you recommend it to them, or are you?
Yep. So, I mean, I always, with my own experience working with clients and my own experience as a property investor and developer, I have quite a unique perspective. I know exactly what they're thinking. I know the things they're going through, the site analysis, all that stuff. What it comes down to for me is, do they have enough capital? The sign says it all, and it's true in buy and hold property, but for property development, it is the truest thing there is. Capital is life.
I would say that probably stretches across. Capital is in funding.
Yes.
Capital is in time.
Yep.
And capital is in capacity. So do you know what you're doing enough where, don't get me wrong, you guys missing a couple of bits here and there on a contract hurts, but you know what you're doing enough. You've been in the game a long time so that you're not making mistakes like, oh, there's no access to stormwater on this side, or, oh, we bought this in a floodplain and now we're going to have to cut and fill to get above the floodplain. All of a sudden, that's not a $50,000 mistake. That's a $250,000 mistake.
And there's the margin.
Yeah.
So importantly, the mistakes we were making were procedural. We know property really well. We've been doing it so long. We were picking properties that had stormwater access quite close, that didn't have overland floodplains, that didn't have protected trees, even though I didn't do that with my own house. But it definitely was development. But it was the thing about the progress payment example, we had enough money to just keep doing the development, keep paying the bills. If we didn't have that capital, that thing would have just ground to a halt.
And the big thing with property development is time. The holding cost, the cost of not doing anything, the cost of the development being late. The faster you get that property development completed, the risk is coming off the development. We see some developments where they're running, 6 months over, and boy, oh boy, is it painful.
And the moment you get a year over, you pretty much kiss it goodbye. Because if you sell, depending on when the market is, if you sell here, it's too cheap, you have rising cost to completion, you actually have a negative margin.
I mean, they say over kind of a property cycle, at least half of property developers will fall over. And it might be a little bit to do with the kind of people that get attracted to the property development game. But also, you can make great money, exceptional money, but it's a freaking hard game to be a part of.
It's a very, very hard thing. And unfortunately, there's people out there who make it look extremely easy, and I know two of them. And they make it look like it's the easiest thing in the world, and they run around like living the life of Riley. But in the reality, they have 10 years experience up to the point where they look like that, and they run an incredibly tight ship. So one of the myths of property development is that it's get rich easily. And the other myth is that it's get rich on one development. Forget it. You might get a little bit of cash, but that's going straight into your next development, your next. You might be 5 developments deep before you start making actual good money out of it.
Agreed.
So this is very cheeky of me. But,
I saw this in there.
You've had a lot of success with property.
Yes.
It's built you a great life.
Yes.
You've alluded to a couple of times the house you are building, which there may have been an Instagram story of you swimming in the pool. How's building your own home going?
Not great. So it's been a 2-year journey. Well, not quite 2 years, it'll be 2 years in May. The actual build itself has only taken 10 months to this point.
Oh, sorry, just to jump on. I also will say that when you bought the property was a good buy at the time.
It was a beautiful house. And a lot of people looked at me and they're like, what are you doing? I ended up destroying the whole house and just keeping the concrete pad. So this first mistake, if you're going to build a new house, demolish the house.
Get rid of it.
Redesign it from scratch as a new house. So I didn't do that. I had it redesigned as an existing dwelling. And what happened throughout the build process, a lot of things that would have been thought out in a new build situation weren't thought out in this redevelopment of the house. And the second thing is that it chews a huge amount of bandwidth. And I run a property business. I run a financial services firm. I have to keep fit and healthy, be social, travel, have a life. And it's really been quite stressful. And also, because it's my own house, I'm attached to it intrinsically, where I wouldn't be with a development. And the little details are the things that end up chewing you up in the middle of the night. So I think the outcome is going to be amazing. I had my first swim in the pool yesterday, that pool's been in the ground for 6 months. It got flooded twice during the Auckland floods. I had to get it pumped out twice. It's got gravel in it from the drainage. It's got bits of trees in it from the trees getting done. But finally, the pool pump and heat pump got hooked up and it's getting filtered and watered.
Looks
but
a bit better,
another muck up. The pool guy drew me a little diagram to get the concrete pad put down, and it had pool filter, heat pump. I thought the heat pump was for my heat pumps. So I just did that pad expecting it to be pool pump and heat pumps. He filled the whole thing. So I now have to get someone back to do another pad. And the heat pump wires in the wrong place. So anyway, I don't recommend it unless you go full turnkey and you don't have anything to do with it.
And we've all seen grand designs, right?
Yes.
Where I honestly and this is I come back to this when my customers are like, I'm going to build a house, and I'm like, just watch grand designs and tell me how many of them were a couple to start with, and now it's just one of them finishing the property.
Just the dude at the end when they do like the "Here's my house" piece.
And it's just super bitter.
There's the one down in Christchurch where the big villa castle Spanish thing. And I'm pretty sure he starts with a partner, splits, gets another partner, splits, and then finishes it by himself, and now it's on the market.
And so, my girlfriend is probably pretty tolerant of the stress that it puts on me, and she does her best to understand it. But, it has been a grandiose project. And I think that's the problem or the trap when you do your own property. And luckily, I've done it later in life where I've had some success. I can actually afford to live through the issues that it's causing me from a cash flow perspective and from a debt perspective. And the outcome's going to be amazing. And it's going to be a grand design, and it's a beautiful house. But it's funny how I can have this huge, long journey in property and still F up my own house. For lack of a better way of putting it.
Do as I say, not as I do.
100%.
So just to make sure this doesn't go into a full-blown therapy session, I think we'll probably wrap it up there.
I think it's a good idea. Go over there and have a cry.
That's right. You can wipe your tears with your money. Matt, this has been really, really interesting. So thank you very much for joining us. I'm sure there are a lot of things that those who are thinking about growing their wealth through property, even if it's not on the development side, just those lessons are really important. If there is somebody who you think, geez, it'd be great to hear their story as well, let us know. We'll see if we can get in touch. Please subscribe, give us a review, and we will catch you next time.
Cheers.
Thanks.